Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, we got a lot of news to talk about in terms of if the NHL does come back. We're getting closer to seeing what they could be doing with this season. So I'm sure most of you have already seen this headline by now, but the NHL and the NHLPA are working on a 24-team conference-based playoff setup. But before we go any further, I am going to get into what this means for every other team in the NHL, all 24 teams that are involved in this. I have a little bit of a bracket showed out, a breakdown of why each teams are playing who, and then we're going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their first round inevitable matchup. And of course, as always, time codes are in the description of the video. So some important things to break down out of this is that the top 4 seeds based on points percentage in the East would be Boston, Tampa Bay, Washington, and Philadelphia. Top 4 in the West would be St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Dallas. And those teams would receive byes through this first play-in round. And the teams that are receiving byes, the top 4 teams in each conference, are going to be playing in like a round-robin little style tournament, but it's unclear yet whether that little round-robin style tournament is going to affect their seeding. So we're going to have to update this as we go. And right now, you are seeing the playoff matchups on the screen right now, and I'm going to show a nicer graphic of this in just a second here, but this play-in round would be a best-of-5 series, and in my opinion, I think that that's really stupid. If you're going to go through all the effort and all the work to make this happen, why not just have the 7-game series, right? I don't think that it would be any more work than what it's already going to be. I don't think that there would be any more risks than what they're already going to have to just play 7 games instead of 5, because then you're changing this. My opinion at the end of the day is that the Stanley Cup playoffs should be the Stanley Cup playoffs, and if you can't make the Stanley Cup playoffs, don't have them. But if you're thinking for a second that they're going through all this effort because we need a winner in the 2020 season because the Stanley Cup is this holy spiritual thing that has a bunch of deeper meaning, and it demands to have a winner each and every year. No, it's not what it is. The Stanley Cup is more of a marketing ploy than anything else, and they're doing this for money. So they're going to do whatever it is that best suits them and their wallets. So I thought it would be good to start with the Western Conference, because then we can do the Eastern Conference and then transition into the Toronto-Columbus series. But there's some interesting playoff matchups here. I mean, Edmonton and Chicago. I mean, Chicago's haven't really had a strong year all season long, but I wouldn't really want to play them in a best-of-5 series, especially when you got Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane there. The Nashville Predators versus the Arizona Coyotes. I mean, the Nashville Predators haven't really been consistent all season long. They kind of turned it on, though, as of late in the last couple of months of the season, but Arizona's been really struggling as of late. Going to be interesting to see if Taylor Hall can live up to what Taylor Hall should have been for them and kind of regain some of that money that he's going to be losing in free agency because of the pandemic and because of his play on the ice. Vancouver, Minnesota is really interesting as well, because Minnesota's been really hot as of late. Vancouver's been really hot as of late. So I think that that's going to be a really, really challenging series. And then Calgary and Winnipeg, I'm going to be watching that series every single game very, very closely. I think that that's going to be an awesome, awesome playoff series. All right, in the Eastern Conference now, Pittsburgh should just steamroll the Montreal Canadiens. I know everyone is saying, well, you don't want to play Carey Price in the best-of-5 series. Well, that's the talk with Montreal all the time, and it hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen the Carey Price of old in a very, very long time, so Pittsburgh should steamroll them over. Carolina and the New York Rangers is going to be very, very interesting, because I'm not sure 100% what the timetable for Dougie Hamilton could be. But the Carolina Hurricanes could get back Dougie Hamilton, and they could also have Sami Vatanen as well, who they acquired in a trade at the trade deadline, who was injured at the time but should be back playing right now. But the New York Rangers were on absolute fire before the pandemic hit and the shutdown hit. Mika Zibanejad had that 5-goal game. He was poised to be a serious, serious threat, and the Rocket Richard running, I don't know. That's going to be a really fun series to watch, and I'm definitely going to be tuning in there. The New York Islanders and the Florida Panthers, probably one of the most irrelevant playoff series going on right now, because the Florida Panthers, although they are an interesting team, the New York Islanders are, I don't know, they were kind of terrible before the shutdown happened, and especially after the trade deadline. So I don't think I'm going to be too interested in that series, but you never know. It could be fun hockey. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. So for the Columbus Blue Jackets, they should be expecting guys like Seth Jones and Cam Atkinson back by injury at this point. I don't know if Josh Anderson is going to play or not. I believe he required shoulder surgery, and that's a reason why he wasn't traded at the deadline. So I'm not 100% clear if Josh Anderson is going to be included in this series or not. But if he was, he definitely could be a huge X factor for the Columbus Blue Jackets. But I mean, they're not as deep as the Toronto Maple Leafs are up front, but I wouldn't call that a disadvantage for them at all, because that blue line there is very, very strong, especially when you're considering Seth Jones, Zach Werenski, Ryan Murray also coming back from an injury as well, but that's not news to Columbus Blue Jackets fans anyway, and their goaltending has been strong for them all season long. It's not going to be an easy task for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're a physical team. They're a relentless team. They're a team that doesn't really give up, and that's shown by them still even being in a position to make this 24-team conference-based playoff setup after losing guys like Artemi Panarin, Matt Duchene, and Ryan Dzingel, and not being able to recoup any assets for them. And when you're using the words resilient and strong and perseverance, I don't think many people would use those words to describe the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, and this would kind of be what the Toronto Maple Leafs would more than likely look to throw out their game one of this series. Now, I do inevitably think that Rasmus Sandin displaces Cody Ceci as these playoffs were to progress. But to start here, I don't think that you could remove Cody Ceci right off the bat 100%, because he is the Maple Leafs' leading defenseman on the penalty kill in terms of ice time this season, and I don't think that the coach is going to remove that player from the lineup without Rasmus Sandin putting up a strong showing at least, or someone else stepping up like a Travis Dermott and showing that they can fill those minutes, and then they can give Rasmus Sandin the minutes that Travis Dermott would have played. But this does mean getting guys like Ilya Mikheyev back from injury. It does mean having Austin Matthews and John Tavares and Mitch Marner and William Nylander at 100%. This does mean that Frederik Andersen should also be at 100%. So we're going to see. I know everyone's going to be a little bit cold, and this is going to be a really big tell for Freddie. I think that this 5-game series against the Columbus Blue Jackets will probably lead into a bigger conversation and determine his fate with the Toronto Maple Leafs moving forward. And Frederik Gauthier here in the playoff lineup, I'm going to tell you why. Defensive zone faceoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs this season, Frederik Gauthier has taken 240 of them, and he's won 54% of them. Now, normally I would say faceoff percentages, the difference between 52 and 48 is not that big of a deal, but 54% is definitely something to look at. And especially the quantity of those defensive zone faceoffs that he's been taking. There's no way that a coach is going to rely upon him to take 240 of those all season long and then say, yeah, you're coming out of the lineup game one, round one of the playoffs. Analytics and the eye test do play a factor in who plays into the lineup, but it's also situational, and it's also who the coach trusts in certain situations. You have to factor that in. So in a 5-game series, should the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Columbus Blue Jackets? Yes, 100%. They should be beating the Columbus Blue Jackets 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100 times. There's no excuse. This roster has the talent, and that's the reason why they didn't blow it up or add anything at the deadline, is because this roster has what it takes already. The upgrades and the better performances have to come from within. So the Maple Leafs are the faster team. They're the team with more skill. They're the team with more raw, untapped potential. But the Blue Jackets did take it to the Tampa Bay Lightning last season, and the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs are very similar in the way that they're built. They're very fast, very skilled teams. So am I confident in a Toronto-Columbus matchup? No. But then again, it's the NHL, and the difference between these teams are very, very small to begin with. But the Toronto Maple Leafs should be beating the Columbus Blue Jackets. And if Toronto goes to beat Columbus in that 5-game series, they would then take on... You gotta be kidding me, right? Buckle up your seatbelts, kids, because not only is Elvis coming to a host city near you, maybe, kind of, but also not confirmed, and they're also not going to be selling any tickets to it, so maybe you could just watch them through the screen and appreciate that. But we're also going to be getting round 4. Probably. We should be. Toronto should beat Columbus of Toronto versus Boston. You know what? Of all the goofy shit that's been going on in the world in the last 4 or 5 months or so, or in the last year even, fourth time might be the charm. But even then, if they were to beat Columbus and Boston, they'd still have to play the Tampa Bay Lightning in round 3 or round 2? I don't know what they're calling it. So, I don't know. Can you really make the argument that these playoffs are going to be easier than the original Stanley Cup format? Because Toronto would have had to have played Tampa Bay under real world normal circumstances, and then Boston. Now they have to play Columbus, Boston, and then Tampa Bay in order to get to the Eastern Conference Finals even. Never mind the Stanley Cup Finals. So now their road to the Cup just got longer. And does that mean that the playoffs are harder or easier? I don't know. But I definitely do think that this 24-team format is a prelude to what the NHL is probably going to look towards in the future. I mean, 24 is a bit much. 20 is fine. 10 teams from each conference. I think that would be fine. So make sure to leave me a like on the video if you did like it. Subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, a lot of you are not going to understand this, but maybe 300 or 400 subscribers to go in and around the trade deadline, which seems like forever ago. I was saying to end off these videos that the Toronto Maple Leafs were going to do the thing. They were going to beat Tampa Bay and the Boston Bruins. And a lot of people, it was just a fun little thing to do to end off these videos. But now I'm bringing it back and I'm tripling down on it. At first, it was just that the Leafs were going to make it past the first round. And then I doubled down and said that they were going to beat both Tampa and Boston. Now I'm tripling down. They're going to beat the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Boston Bruins, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that would be an amazing feat for them to accomplish. And they'd probably lose in the Eastern Conference Finals after the fact, which would be very, very heartbreaking for them to do all 3 of those things and then just lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. But they're going to do that. Trust me. Believe me. 100% cold hard facts only on this channel. It's not just a thing that I'm saying for fun.